Hard hits, forced turnovers, 3 and outs. A lockdown defense can make any NFL team successful. Over the years, we have had plenty of dominant teams on the defensive side of the ball. We have seen defenses that almost seemed impossible to dissect. But what team was the toughest? What team deserves the ranking of the best NFL defense of all time? Hey, what up guys? Apologies for it being a bit since I uploaded. I actually went on a trip back home to visit my friends and family, and I didn't really have time for anything, but I'm back.
They do, baby. Yeah.
And I can promise now that I got a lot more time on my hands and can upload more often. I know you don't want to miss these new videos, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Let's try to get at least 25 likes on this video, and without taking up any more of your time, let's get into it. When you think about ranking the all-time best defenses, there's really 3 teams that just are automatically at the top of any list. There's many other defenses that are all-time greats, and I'm sure people are going to be looking for some of these great defensive teams like, the Bucks, Raiders, Dolphins, and Falcons from back in the days, as well as more recent great defenses like the Seahawks and Broncos. But there's 3 teams that, to me, just stand above all others. In no particular order, we have the 2000 Ravens, the 1985 Bears, and the 1976 Steelers. To me, these 3 defenses stand alone as the greatest, but do they stand together? Of course not. We're here today to try and rank these 3 defenses and decide which is better than the others.
Who's number one? Who's number one? Who's number one? Who's number one?
But before we can compare these teams to each other, first, let's refresh our memories quick and take a look back at these 3 teams. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Where do we start? Led by the great Ray Lewis, first thing to note is the fact that this team's offense went 5 games in the regular season without a touchdown.
Dang, that's tough.
And they finished the season 12-4 despite that. That sums up the balance of this team. The Ravens defense simply just denied any type of running game and forced teams to try and throw to win against them. But they shut that down as well and only gave up 165 points the entire season. That's an average of 10.3 points per game allowed. That's insane. They somehow topped themselves in the playoffs by only allowing 23 points in 4 playoff games. Out of those 23 points allowed, 9 were on field goals and 7 were because of a kick return for a touchdown. So they really only gave up 1 offensive touchdown in 4 entire games. This team was the textbook definition of defense wins championships, as their amazing defense led them to a Super Bowl victory that year. The 1985 Bears are up next. And if you know classic NFL teams, this is not unfamiliar territory. I mean, this team is what defenses today try to compare themselves to as a measuring stick of greatness. Having a team that forces 64 turnovers as well as recording 64 sacks, how could you lose? With players like Mike Singletary, a rookie by the name of William Perry, aka The Fridge, Dan Hampton, Richard Dent, and this defense just had it all. The Bears went 15-1 in 1985 and dominated the playoffs en route to a championship. It's no wonder why. Including the playoffs, the Bears allowed 10 or less points in 14 out of 19 games. And not to mention, listen to these playoff performances. 2 shutouts and only gave up 10 points in the Super Bowl, while holding opposing offenses to only 144 total yards per game. What? This defense dominated the NFL in 1985 start to finish. Last but not least, the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers, aka the Steel Curtain. Most NFL fans, even the ones with hatred for the Steelers, have heard of the term the Steel Curtain. I mean, Mean Joe Green, Jack Ham, all the OGs. The Steel Curtain dominated the 70s, but this 1976 team is most notably known for having the best stretch of defensive performances in NFL history. Coming off back-to-back Super Bowl wins, the Steelers got off to a shaky start to the season and things were not all great defensively. They were giving up about 22 points a game and started the season 1-4. This was the turning point. Over the last 9 games of the regular season, the Steelers' defense showed out like no other defense anyone had ever seen. In the final 9 games, the defense only allowed 28 total points. That's 3.1 points per game allowed, with 5 of those games being complete shutouts.
I got a better idea. No fucking way.
Absolutely locking teams down. As sad as it is, this team did not end up winning a championship, largely due to the team losing their top 2 running backs, including the great Franco Harris early in the playoffs, and they only scored 7 points in the game against the Raiders, which ultimately ended the run. This team at its peak was virtually impossible to score on though, and we will never forget them. So now we get into the tough part. Trying to rank these 3 teams and compare them to one another. I decided the best way to rank these teams was to break down the defenses into categories and see which team ranks the highest in each category. First off, we look at the numbers and whose stats stand out the most. When it comes down to season stats for these teams, the 1976 Steelers stand just ahead of the others, averaging under 10 points per game allowed, as well as less than 240 total yards allowed per game, is just above the others. And although they did not force the most turnovers out of the group, leading in 2 out of the 3 major categories and being second in the other makes it possible to decide that the Steelers have the best defensive stats. Next, we move on to winning. Well, it's tough to have the Steelers take this category considering they did not win the Super Bowl that year, so for now, we're going to write them off. The Ravens finished 12-4 and the Bears finished 15-1. The Bears had a more dominant regular season, but both teams still won the Super Bowl, so who do we go with? The Ravens didn't allow more than 10 points in all 4 playoff games, but the Bears had 2 shutouts. After thinking long and hard, I'm gonna have to give the category of winning to the 1985 Chicago Bears due to the fact that they only lost 1 game the whole season and they were just dominant start to finish. Next, we try to determine our next category. Which of these teams did more with less? As in, which team's defense carried them and had less help overall? This one was not hard for me to decide on. I mean, in simple terms, the Bears had Walter Payton and the Steelers had Terry Bradshaw. Simple as that. The Ravens had a great rookie running back in Jamal Lewis, as well as the great tight end Shannon Sharp, but the offense had some games where they really just did not show up. The passing game was pretty bad the whole year, and out of the 4 playoff games, the team never had over 200 passing yards. The defense really carried this team all the way to greatness, and they really just easily did more with less than the other 2 teams. So now we have each defense owning 1 category. The question becomes, what's going to separate them? The Ravens impressed me because of the way they carried their team, especially considering this team is the most recent of the 3 options, and how teams these days don't really play defense like they used to. It's pretty impressive what they did for the era the NFL was heading towards. The Steelers also had me so close to labeling them as the greatest of all time just due to their peak and how dominant they really were for a huge stretch of games. But I just can't escape the pure dominant start to finish by the Chicago Bears defense in 1985. The amount of turnovers they forced, the sacks, and legit fear these guys put in opposing quarterbacks, and the pure dominance even against the best teams in the NFL in the playoffs, it just led me to believe that the 1985 Chicago Bears are the greatest defense of all time, put it this way, including the playoffs, in 1985, the Bears defense outscored the entire opposing team in 9 out of the 18 games, exactly half. The defense literally won half of the games completely by themselves. The offense didn't even have to show up. And that's just unmatched. The Bears sit alone at the top of the list of the greatest defenses ever. You can look at it however you want, but to me, the Bears are my number one, and let me know. Let me know what you guys have as your top 3 and especially your number 1 defense of all time. And also let me know if you want more videos ranking all-time teams. I got nothing else for you guys today, and I really hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for next time. Peace.